Hong Kong voters headed to the polls today in the first major election since the Occupy protests in 2014. There is still 3 hours to go until polling stations close tonight, but voter turnout numbers are already slightly higher than those for the 2012 polls. As of 5:30, more than 1.3 million people had voted in the geographical constituencies, representing a turnout rate of 35.30%. Anne-Marie Sim begins our election coverage.
People have been flocking to polling stations across Hong Kong to vote in the city's first election since the Occupy protests in 2014. Polling stations opened at 7:30 a.m. and among the first to cast their votes were top government officials. While visiting a polling station on Robinson Road in the mid-levels with his wife Regina at around 8 a.m, Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying said he believed voters would use their independent minds to choose a candidate. He noted that today's elections were democratic, as reflected in the voters' freedom of choice, and that there was no need for other people to teach them how to vote. Chief Secretary for Administration Carrie Lam was also out early, voting at a polling station on the Peak at around 8 a.m. She urged the city's 3.7 million eligible voters to cast their ballots and make a difference.
I can fully understand that over recent years, you may be upset and disturbed by the increasing confrontation in the Legislative Council. And you may be disappointed by the fact that Hong Kong, the city we love, has not been making more progress that she deserves. But it is exactly for this reason that I urge you to vote, because indifference will not lead us anywhere. Your vote is a vote of confidence in Hong Kong.
Secretary for Justice Rim Ski-yun reiterated as he cast his vote on the Peak that independence claims violated the Basic Law and were not in the best interests of Hong Kong.
There are requirements in the Basic Law in relation to the role and also the duties of legislative councillors. One of those would be the provisions in the Basic Law, which require that anyone who is being elected, but before they assume office as a member of the Legislative Council, will have to take an oath to uphold the Basic Law. So in any situations where there are any conduct which is inconsistent with the applicable law in Hong Kong, we would take appropriate action.
Referencing the candidates who withdrew from the election race at the 11th hour, Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Raymond Tam reminded them that they were not technically allowed to do that.
Because under the law, each and every candidate, after their nomination has been validated by the returning officer, the candidate list would appear on each and every postal ballot.
Anne-Marie Sim, TVB News.
And we cross over live now to our reporter Winna Wong, who is standing by at a polling station in North Point. Winna, how's it looking out there?
Hi, Chris. So I'm currently standing at a polling station in City Garden near in North Point, and there's currently about 3 hours left until polling stations across Hong Kong are due to close. Now it's about dinner time right now, but we have noticed that the amount of people coming in and out continues to remain quite steady. In fact, the later it gets, the more people there are. Now, the voter turnout rate for this year is not bad at all. According to government numbers, as of 5:30 p.m., the cumulative voter turnout rate was about 35%, which is about 3% higher than the same time last year. Lines aren't so bad here at this polling station, but we have heard that over in places like Tai Kwu Shing, there were about 200 people lining up to vote at one point, and people had to wait for about 45 minutes. Now, TVB Pearl will remain a close eye on the election throughout the night. That's it from me. Back to you at the studio.
Electors headed to the polls early today to make their voices heard. Many of them came prepared with a set of criteria the candidate must have for them to win their vote. Rachel Leung has that story.
Despite it being a Sunday, Hong Kong voters woke up early to cast their ballots. Long queues formed outside some polling station at around lunchtime. Voters flock to polling stations like this one in North Point, with some making it a family affair by casting their ballots together. And many of them had prepared a set of criteria the candidate must have for them to win their votes.
Well, who can contribute to Hong Kong as a, society? It's a difficult situation in Hong Kong, of course, with China, and so I think we're trying to. I think Hong Kong society in general are doing the best they can to, make the most of it, and I wish them all the best.
Actually, nowadays it's very difficult to say anything. Just trying to do the best of Hong Kong. Well, I don't want any conflict. I don't want any swelling.
Some wanted to have their voice heard because they were unhappy with what was happening in the legislature, with lawmakers filibustering.
I want everyone to calm down and go back to work, doing what Hong Kong does best, which is trading, building up industry, and cooperating with the mainland government.
The Electoral Affairs Commission said it had so far received 1,088 complaints relating to the polls. The majority of them were about election advertisements, followed by complaints about the voting qualifications and arrangements, and then canvassing activities.
As to election advertisements, on the election days, most of them come in the form of putting up election advertisements in unauthorized places. And if there were such complaints and if they were substantiated, then the Food and Health Department will send teams to remove them. Canvassing activities are usually just nuisances and things like that.
Rachel Leung, TVB News.
In the District Council's second functional constituency, there are 9 candidate lists this time around, but Pan Democrats, heading 3 of the lists, announced earlier they were no longer in the race. Caleb Leung has that story.
Kelvin Ho earlier announced his decision to call it quit. He said the polls indicated his odds of winning a seat were slim, and he hoped the votes would go to other Pan Democrats so that 3 of them could win super seats in the election. Meanwhile, Sum Lee Chan also suspended his campaign before the election. He was worried he would affect the Pan Democrats' campaign arrangements. He urged the public to support other Pan Democratic candidates in his constituency. As for Kwan Wing Yip, he claimed he has received lots of messages demanding that he drop out of the race. For the ones who are still in the race, there's a mixed reaction from Pan Democratic candidates. Leung Yiu-chung said the withdrawal announcements were all too sudden. He is afraid the news would confuse supporters of Pan Democrats. James To, who is seeking re-election, believes the candidates who have ceased campaigning did not betray their supporters. Kwong Chun-yu also supported the ones who have withdrawn from the race, calling their move a brave and difficult decision. But they drew criticism from candidates on the other side of the political spectrum. Holden Chow calling their decision a renouncement on promises made to the voters. He said electoral elections are a serious business, not a game. As for Wong Kwok Heng, he said with multiple Pan Democrats withdrawing from the race, it created a big threat to his campaign. Now he has to beg for votes from the public. Starry Lee, who is also seeking re-election, said the withdrawals did not affect their arrangements, as other Pan Democrats may not be able to absorb all those votes. Caleb Leung, TVB News.